Rogue Brewing did this thing last October called Paint the Can Dead, which I didn't realize was a thing until the day after submissions closed. Tried to sneak a last-minute edition in, but they ultimately decided to pass on my painstakingly crafted artwork. I was looking around on Rogue's Instagram last month to see if they were doing it again. They are. Submissions close on Halloween, FYI. But I stumbled across this post, which I find arguably more intriguing. While my artistic skills may be found lacking, I can make a mean cocktail. First, I wanted to taste the whiskey by itself. I've had both the Dead Guy Ale and the Dead Ale. Dead Guy Ale aged in Dead Guy whiskey barrels, but not the actual spirit. It's made with the same barleys used in the Dead Guy Ale wort, those being 2-row, Munich, and C15. It's pot distilled and aged in new white oak barrels on the Oregon coast. Tasting the whiskey by itself, it's a pretty straightforward American single malt. Because it's all malted barleys, it doesn't have the intense richness provided by corn or the herbal spicy characteristics of rye that are present in other American whiskey styles like bourbon and rye. I get a lot of honey sweetness on the nose, which morphs into a light caramel on the palate. I also got a nice stone fruit note as I continued my tasting, think along the lines of a light peach syrup. The peach is still present on the finish, but gives way to that honey sweetness once again. It's definitely a good American single malt, and the branding is very macabre, but what could we do to amplify its festiveness in all the spookiest ways? I pondered this for a moment, and a brilliant idea struck me. I'm a big fan of figs. Ever since visiting California at the end of the summer a decade ago and attending the Fresno Fig Fest, I've been smitten with their subtle tanginess, syrupy sweetness, and chewy flesh. I even decided to grow a hardy fig varietal myself. It bums me out because they're only in season for like 3 weeks out of the year, at the end of the summer and the beginning of fall, so I have a tendency to go nuts on them in that brief window of time. However, someone recently remarked to me that they resemble guts and are generally unsettling. That means they're perfect for this cocktail, but we also don't necessarily want to be chewing on our drink either. To get the flavor without the corresponding difficulty of consumption, I opted to craft a fig-infused simple syrup for the beverage. You could definitely use an off-the-shelf fig cocktail syrup, link in description, but because I had a surplus of brown figs in my fridge, I opted to create a homemade simple syrup, which I'll briefly detail. Finally chop 12 brown figs, cover with water, and simmer for 2 hours, adding more water as it evaporates. Strain into a separate measuring cup to remove seeds and flesh. Combine strained fig extract with equal parts brown and white sugar and bring to a light simmer for 15 minutes. Allow to cool to room temperature before putting in a container. Refrigerate when not using. We'll also need something to pair with and balance out the funky sweetness of the fig. Maybe something a little smoky, a little nutty. Cue black walnut bitters. It's the perfect dark bitter for adding some interesting spice to our concoction. I also opted to add 2 garnishes. Half of a brown fig so we still get the fruit's unsettling visual element, and a maraschino cherry garnish to serve as the heart in our gutsy motif, which I'll affix to an on-brand skeletal cocktail skewer I found on Amazon. Link also in description. Now that I have the base components more or less solidified, I now had 2 routes I could take this. The more flamboyant sour route, or the more subdued old-fashioned-esque route. I ultimately leaned towards the sour variant because the sweet and sour nature invokes trick-or-treat vibes and makes for a more approachable drink. I've decided I'll be making this cocktail for our Halloween party this year, win or lose. I also decided to add just enough tart cherry juice in tandem with the fresh lemon juice to give it a more ruddy color. With that, I present to you the Viscera Sour. 2 ounces of Dead Guy whiskey, half an ounce of lemon juice, a 1/4 ounce of tart cherry juice, half an ounce of fig simple syrup, or 3/4 of an ounce if you want it a little sweeter and more figgy, 4 dashes of black walnut bitters, half a fig, and a maraschino cherry garnish on an appropriately festive skewer. Here are the instructions. Add Dead Guy whiskey, lemon and cherry juices, fig simple syrup, a dash of black walnut bitters, and egg white, or substitute if you must, to a shaker and dry shake for 30 seconds without ice. Add ice and shake again until well chilled. Strain into a rocks glass or a coupe. Garnish with a festively grim skewer of a maraschino cherry and half of a fresh fig and 2 to 3 drops of black walnut bitters. So I've already had a sip of this, but I think it's a winner. The fig and cherry kind of play really nicely together. The fig Simple syrup with both white sugar and brown sugar smooths out that sweetness and also gives it like a richer feel than if I were to just use white sugar. The figs definitely give it a good guts motif, and the black walnut bitters and the brown sugar really work well together. Honestly, the black walnut bitters combined with the fig is a super unique and interesting combo. Yeah, this is definitely a spooky season winner. I think the fig and black walnut bitters combo with the Dead Guy whiskey is a real hit. I've seen some other cocktail entries and I am very impressed. May the spookiest mixologist win. Also, Paint the Can Dead is still going on. So if you're more proficient with a brush than myself, you should definitely get your entry in before Halloween. I'll be doing a bonus stream sometime this month where we taste Rogue's entire Dead Guy lineup and then play some necromancy-oriented Skyrim quests, so be sure to subscribe and tune in for the stream. With that, cheers, and I'm gonna wish you a happy Halloween! See you on Thursday's stream.